Brian, could you come and say a few words?
Well, I will respect the fact that I'm not on the schedule today, and I'll make this very quick. I happen to be reading, it goes right along with what Dr. Kurtman was talking about a minute ago. I happen to be reading a book right now by Oliver DeMille called A Thomas Jefferson Education. And if you like the kind of things that Dr. Kurtman was talking about, you will love this book. I've just got a couple of words I want to say to you, but let me just preface it by reading you a couple of sentences from this book. He says, at some point in your life, and I just encourage each and every one of you to understand that the point that he's talking about in these couple of sentences is indeed the point where each and every one of us, you and I, stand at this point right now. He says, at some point in your life, you will face a situation where you are in a leadership position and dozens, maybe even thousands or millions look to you to lead. When that occurs, you will not feel ready. Here's what I mean by that. Every single one of us is in this room because we want to be labeled as an activist. This is activist boot camp. So we're not here, when someone looks at us later on and says, oh, are you an activist? We shouldn't feel embarrassed by that. We publicly came to a public place because we want people to know that we are activists and we want to be educated on what do activists do. So, part of being an activist is to be a leader. In that quote he said, it may only be dozens of people, but guess what? We could even take it further down. We could say maybe it's only a couple of people that we're going to lead. But every single one of us in this room can, and I believe should, do some little measurable things that we can just think to ourselves, yes, I played a role in the Patriot Uprising. I am an activist. And so that 20 years from now, 30 years from now, when our grandkids or great-grandkids are sitting in our lap, looking up at us with those little innocent eyes, having just done the math and realized that you and I were alive during this pivotal moment in time, when they look up at us and they say, Grandma, Grandpa, I just figured out that you were alive during the years of 2010, 11, 12, when the battle for America, the second battle for America, the rebirthing of America was happening. And they look at you and they say, what was it like? Folks, let me tell you what you want to be able to do in that situation is you want to be able to sit up proudly and have your chest puff out just a little bit and say, let me tell you, little Johnny, what I did. And be able to explain to little Johnny the role that you played in turning America around. Because the other answer to that, what you don't want, is you don't want to tell little Johnny, well, little Johnny, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we lost America at a time when I could have done something. But Johnny, you've got to understand, I was on bowling league. I'm sure little Johnny, realizing what was taken away from him by the people of this generation that didn't do anything about it, I'm sure little Johnny will be very understanding, don't you? So here's what we can do. We can each find something. Today you've been given a buffet of things that you can be involved in. You've been given a buffet of suggestions. Here's what I suggest. Pick something. Pick something. Even if it's a small step, pick something because action breeds more action. Don't do what Pastor Smith was talking about and be the typical conservative who just sits around drinking coffee with other conservatives, talking about the problems but doing nothing. Let's not do that. So I'm going to give you one small suggestion, and that is, this is something anybody can do. Just go to where the entities of our government are conducting their business. Whether that means the school board, whether that means the city council, whether that means the county commission, the state legislature, if you have the resources and time to go to Washington, D.C., what I'm saying is make those stinking politicians do what they're going to do in front of the whites of your eyes while you're watching them.
That's right.
Because I can tell you, it does make a difference. As a person who walks the halls at our state capitol in Jeff City, I can tell you I have heard members of the legislature, particularly in committee meeting settings, that were intending to vote one way chicken out and vote the other way because they had constituents in the room watching them. I can tell you black and white, absolutely, this is not anecdotal, this is not me supposing that this might happen. I can tell you in my 7 years in the legislature, I have heard multiple stories, face-to-face stories, I've seen it with my own eyes, people changing their vote from what was going to be a bad vote to a good vote simply because they had constituents in the room watching them do what they were doing. I would have to say that the same thing would happen at city council meetings. I would have to say that the same thing will happen in school board meetings. I would have to say that anywhere where a governing body has convened and they are going to make decisions, if you and I will simply go, we don't even have to say a word. If you're one of those people that's real quiet, and you've heard all these different things talked about today, and you say, oh, but Brian, I don't know if I could go door to door, and but Brian, I don't know if I could do this or do that. Okay, ease your way into it. Go to some of these meetings and just remember this. If you'll make those stinking politicians do what they're going to do in front of you, they'll probably do a better job than they were going to do in your absence. Right. And it's something that anybody can do, and I just encourage you to be a part of that. Thank you for everything that you're doing. You have made my job so much easier. You know, Dave, my right-hand man, we've been fighting this battle for almost 20 years. I was telling the people at my table during the break, one of the coolest things about this Patriot Uprising is that, you know, I used to have to, you know, if anybody would ask me, I never hid the fact that I was a right-wing radical, okay? But I couldn't necessarily shout it from the mountaintops, you know what I mean? You folks have made it possible for me to be able to shout it from the mountaintops because now you've made it cool to be a right-wing radical, a.k.a. a patriot. And I appreciate that.